What's up, everybody? I am back, ready to do my spoiler review of Fantastic Four First Steps. And I got a lot to say. Um, with the pros and the cons here. But before I get into my personal feelings, let me go over the plot of it all. This was directed by Matt Shackman, who I believe was responsible with WandaVision. You can tell by the film. If you've seen the film, they got like retro, futuristic '60s look to it. Very also much taking like inspiration from Jack Kirby stuff, which they gave a nice homage to at the end. Um, uh, we got Pedro Pascal playing Mr. Fantastic, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Yvonne Moss Bachrach plays Ben Grimm, uh, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, Julia Gardner as the Shalabal Silver Surfer, uh, Sarah Niles as Lynn Nichols, CEO of Future Foundation, uh, Mark Gatiss as Ted Gerbert, the host of the Gerbert Show, Natasha Lyonne as Rachel Rosman, Paul Walter Hauser as the Mole Man, and Ralph Inson as Galactus. Now, this takes place on Earth 828 in a 1960s era, where apparently, I guess, racism isn't a thing because it's like out and about, and it's fine. I kind of prefer to not try to, make it super authentic. It's just like, no, it's just, very much like the Jetsons, people of all races, there's no issue with racism or any type of bigotry. Just like we just use the backdrop and just apply people and just moving on. I appreciate that because I think that was best. We don't need any more of this, like talking about any type of oppression, Olympics or whatever. It's just like I really don't want to put that in here. We're talking about a comic book story. Let's stick with it. So I really appreciate that. Anyway, Reed and Sue, who, by the way, the way is, I'll get to the whole Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby of it all at the end of this, but I gotta say they do have at least all four, especially, but these two have good chemistry. They really sell the whole married couple aesthetic, and like with Superman, they're 4 years into being a superhero, while Superman was 3 years into being a superhero. So they kind of like touched on their origin and they kind of just move on. I think many people, by and large, are very appreciative because they did that with Matt Reeves, the Batman, as well. He was like 2 years into his superhero career. So it's like, yeah, I think we're reached at a point with our superhero films or TV shows that, okay, if they're by and large well-known superheroes, we don't need to hash out their origin story. When they do the Green Lantern TV show with Hal Jordan teaching John Stewart the ropes, it's pretty much a John Stewart origin story, pretty much, because that really hasn't been addressed all that much because we don't see like a live action John Stewart like that. But we pretty much know Hal Jordan's origin story, so I'm pretty sure they'll just touch on it and just get to the point. Well established heroes, we need to just get to the point. Same way with Wonder Woman, get to the point. We know the whole thematic of it all. You know, I don't know, my Martian Manhunter. I think he can get a little bit of leeway with his origin story, but even still, I think my point is we can just cut to the chase with a lot of these heroes at this point. Uh, so they a nice little homage to certain comics, like their first team up, uh, tangling with that giant monster on the one of the Jack Kirby comics. Uh, uh, a nice little homage to all that stuff. Tangling with the Mole Man with his, I think one of his first appearances is bringing down like a building into the underground, and they dealing with him, and he looks very spot on too. How he looks in the comic, even down to the goofy little glasses and stuff. Like, I really appreciate that. Just embracing the comic bookiness of the world. Uh, um, so, uh, they established like the Baxter Building as the future foundation. So I'm glad they, bringing in the Fantastic Four lore pieces into this. Sorry, I had the window cracked open because it's kind of stuffy in here. Uh, but then like Sue finding out she's pregnant. Later on, Ben and Johnny, they are made aware. And I gotta say, well, I think Ben and Sue are, in my opinion, are the more spot on to their characters. Yvonne and Vanessa like are very spot on with their portrayal as those particular characters. Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn, lesser degree, but still pretty much in that vicinity. So I can't. God, it's so annoying. Sorry about that. But but I think Ben Grimm was more of the highlight, in this movie for me, and I like his look in this. Now, don't get me wrong, personally, because I think a lot of people really, are taking the time to really crap on, for the most part, the Tim Story Fantastic Four films. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some issues. I'll get into it now once I'm talking about it. I think this movie, like with Superman, I think a lot of people are taking notice that they're trying to right the wrongs from past Superman and Fantastic Four films that didn't get certain things right or overstepped in some kind of way, to make sure, like, okay, we're not gonna make those same mistakes. And here, look, like with the whole Superman thing, going out of his way to save as much of the buildings and almost everybody down to the squirrels as much as possible, because Man of Steel didn't really give a crap. Well, at least Zack Snyder, in his portrayal of Superman and Man of Steel, didn't seem to have him care all that much. So we're and then snapping Zod's neck and all this other stuff. We're addressing, like, we're like, look, we're not stupid. We know the character. We appreciate the character. We're going to honor the character. So we're going our way to make sure we do the character justice. Here with the Fantastic Four, they want to make sure that, okay, we got bright, colorful costumes, and we got like a lived-in world where they were fighting their, some of the classic rogues. Even though they did announce what's his name as Red Ghost, they only see one of the monkeys. But I think people are noticing there's a lot of stuff that's been cut for time, because I think this movie would have been a little bit longer, but they had to cut certain things. You can just tell, because there's clearly certain things with Ben Grimm that they kind of, put a spotlight on. Like, there's a moment where he's looking at an image in one of the storefront windows and kind of like, oh man, like I used to look, I used to be human, but I still feeling melancholy about it. But you know, it's like clearly they want to delve more into that stuff, but it's kind of like, fell by the wayside. Uh, Now I like my Ben Grimm not to be so mopey about his appearance because I think after I want to say like after a few years, but it's just eventually he do get over in the comics. Uh, but every once in a while, that feeling rears ugly head, and it's like him contemplating that kind of thing every once in a while. You know, nice little reference point. Uh, but I love the look of Ben Grimm in here, very Jack Kirby. Although personally, Tim Story's Fantastic Four, I think is kind of being slept on. It has its problems, but uh, I think it was ahead of its time because it embraced the comic bookiness that I guess people at the time wasn't really ready for, because they think it was it goes around a time when comic book movies need to be grounded and blah blah blah. Uh, but personally, I still love the casting in those films more so than I do here, for the most part. I think this movie had to work doubly hard with their casting because half of it wasn't very spot on for me. For me personally, I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, but as I was saying, yeah, this movie is really making up for like the mistakes, especially with Fan Four Stick, especially because that was like trying to do some kind of body horror thing, and it's like you're making all the pitfalls. Like, no, we know what these characters look like, we know how they're supposed to behave, we know what kind of world we're dealing with. None is unnecessary BS. All these characters are white. I appreciate the fact they acknowledge that Ben Grimm is Jewish, even though they should cast like probably a Jewish actor, unless Ebon Moss is Jewish descent. Let me look this up because like I do not know. Because it's the same thing I had the feeling uh with what's his name, Oscar Isaac. It wasn't until a little bit after the first couple of episodes of the Moon Knight show that I realized, oh, he has some Israeli, background in him. But is he? Huh. Yeah, his father was born in Germany to two Jewish American parents. So yeah, he is good on them. Uh, Even though the guy was in the Punisher TV show, so it's kind of weird that they casted that guy who was in the Punisher as Microchip. Whatever. He did a great job. But this film, you know, they have him clearly sparking up some kind of romantic kinship with Natasha Lyonne's character, and it's like, who is this supposed to be some kind of, where is crap, dang, the blind woman, dang it, crap, what is it? I'm blanking on crap, does it start with an S or an N, her name? uh Alicia Masters. Oh, that was her name. Oh God, I was blanking. Like, it's like this was some kind of faux pseudo Alicia Masters. It's like, you know, because that's not who her character is, and that was kind of weird. It's like, who is this lady? Like, what are we doing here? It's like, you could have just at least, because Natasha Lyonne was in Blade Trinity playing a blind woman, and it's like, why couldn't you just have her play another blind woman if you really want to spark some kind of thing, no pun intended, between Ben and her, instead of just, that part was weird. I was like, okay, who's this random woman that you're trying to spark some relationship with the Ben Grimm with, and not be Alicia Masters? That's crazy to me. Um. Anyway. So yeah, the race, like the relationship with the team is pretty spot on. They find out they're pregnant, and they're beloved by the masses because this world they're the only superheroes. Uh, uh, oh my god, I was bringing up the Tim Story Fantastic Four for a reason. I really like those films because, you know, they're charming. The casting was just spot on. They even had a lot of the actors from Tim Story films and the Roger Corman films I never seen. I've seen clips growing up. I never actually watched them because it doesn't look like my speed to watch. And I even heard that it was even bad. It was just kind of like fun bad for a lot of people. But even some of it, I'm shocked they were even still alive. They all showed up to the red carpet for this film. But I like Michael Chiklis, you know, Ben Grimm. I like that because he has like a naturally gravelly voice to because it's very distinct compared to how he was as regular Ben. Because you know, Michael used his standard voice, but then as he, you know, went to Ben Grimm, it got more gravelly. So it kind of sells it, and it's very like the kind of real prosthetics. It's not like super CGI heavy as like First Steps and Fantastic was with Ben Grimm, where, you know, the actors actually have, you know, was acting off each other. There's no tennis balls or whatever. But Eban did an incredible job as his portrayal as Ben Grimm, even though like his look was more accurate from the comics, at least the Jack Kirby version. But you know, Michael Chiklis thing, you know, he it was more. I grew up; those were my Fantastic Four growing up, so I have a warm spot for that version. Yeah, that's why I got a kick out of seeing Chris Evans, Johnny Storm, in Deadpool and Wolverine, because those were dope characters and very spot on casting, and they really embody those. You look at like even Goodford, who played Mr. Fantastic in Tim Story's film. You look at him currently right now. He took great care of himself. He still looks a very much more like Reed Richards, even more so now compared to somebody like Pedro Pascal. Which, by the way, he wasn't Disney's first choice, wasn't even the second. I think he was the third choice. I think John Hamm was like either the first or second choice before Pedro, but I guess the scheduling conflicted, so he couldn't really accept it. So they kind of just went with Pedro, after the third, searching around. Much to a lot of people's chagrin, because I'm going to address it right here and now. Pedro Pascal is overdone. He's overplayed. He's like how the Joker was a few years ago. It's like, oh my God, he's been done to death. Leave him alone. It's like the whole Pedro fatigue is just like getting crazy. And it's like, you don't have to accept I get it. You got to work. You want to work. You want to like make a living. I get it. I'm not clowning you for that part. I think after the Mandalorian, you would think, okay, you have reached a point where you have the capability of choosing your projects smartly. You're not, you know, early in your career where you have to accept a little thing just to get your name out there and your face out there. You have gone past that point. You don't have to, do all that stuff anymore. Now you're in the danger zone of oversaturating yourself, where people just don't want to deal with you at all. At least the audience don't want to deal with you at all. And it's like, oh God, when they do those corny 60s cartoon animations, because they got an in-world cartoon show about them, they even have him look exactly like, Pedro Pascal, half Chilean dude. God, I'm just done with that guy. The guy, I'll get to the whole red carpet press conference thing with him and Vanessa Kirby at the end of all this, because that is freaking weird. But in any case, they are established superheroes, loved by all their celebrities, but one day, the Silver Surfer shows up, heralding Galactus. And now, the Fantastic Four, even though Sue is pregnant, for some dumb reason, they gotta bring a pregnant woman on to a potentially dangerous mission. I don't care if she has like superpowers. It's like, it's not the time, not the place to be bringing like a pregnant woman on an aircraft to face a alien creature that eats planets. So, but they eventually, using like wormholes to do light speed travel, they come across Galactus's ship. And I gotta say, the scale of this is incredible. The look of this and the scale of this is incredible. He just recently ate a planet. They get, a tractor beam on them, and they get set inside the ship, where they meet Galactus, who, like I said before, did a lot of corrections from like Rise of the Silver Surfer, instead of being like a stupid cloud, because at that time people didn't think the audience would accept a big purple man in a big man in a purple suit that eats planets. It's not something they probably either had the capability of showing or didn't think the audience would accept it, or didn't trust the audience to accept it, because they didn't fully embrace the world that these people were in. So we see this gigantic, massive figure, and they try to negotiate with Galactus. It's like, if you're really embracing the Jack Kirby of this, using Jack Kirby as inspiration, where's the ultimate nullifier? Because the first time the Fantastic Four, dealt with Galactus, Reed managed to, strike a bargain. He comes to bargain. The ultimate nullifier erases any and everything completely, even somebody as powerful as Galactus, from existence, right down to the last molecule. And in the comics, Galactus agrees. Okay, because Galactus, he honors his bargains. He's a force of nature. He just consumes planets in order to sustain himself, because that's how he lives. He doesn't make him evil, doesn't make him good. He just is. So he honors his bargain in the comics. Like, okay, I will leave this planet alone. Okay, give me an ultimate nullifier. He gives an ultimate nullifier, but he's like, kind of, Galactus pretty much in the comics, if I recall correctly, he mentions to Reed because he was kind of, him and the team was kind of hesitant on giving pretty much their golden gun away to the enemy, but Galactus is like, if you want me to establish trust, you want me to trust you, you need to trust me. Because I keep my bargains. As you see that, from the Silver Surfer, the male version, the right version, like, he became my hero. In return, I left his planet alone. And he could contest that I left it alone. So, when I honor a bargain, I honor it. So, I got to be able to trust you not to use this at any point in time on me. So, give me the ultimate nullifier. I will leave. I won't bother your planet. I'll move on. So he does. He leaves the planet alone. He never returned. Every time you see Galactus, he always feeding on other planets. He never came back to Earth, except for certain special events Marvel want to do, or some kind of Elseworld story, or whatever. That's usually the normal exceptions, but not like the mainline things. Here, they try to strike a negotiation with Galactus to keep him from consuming their planet because it's next on the chopping block thanks to the Silver Surfer. But Galactus realizes that Sue's baby, who we'll know to be Franklin Richards, in the comics has the power of reality warping, where currently in the comics they've been playing fast and loose of him being a mutant. For all intents and purposes, a lot of comic book readers consider Franklin Richards a mutant, and he has reality-altering powers, which in current comics, because he ends up using his powers to shut it off, but it doesn't last long. So every few years, it comes back up. He has to then, utilize it to like deal with like certain threats that might be, reality-altering or dangerous on a multiversal scale or something like that, or it becomes like a danger to the whole planet. He kind of tidies it up once everything seems like, everything looks okay. It's like, and then he turns off his powers, but it keeps coming back. So I kind of like that because we can't, just like with someone like Doctor Strange, they got to nerf him somehow because, they don't want no built-in Deus Ex Machina that people are going to try to utilize, other writers are going to try to utilize to try to fix wherever corner they wrote themselves in. So it's like, okay, Doctor Strange, magic has a cost, so you can't just do whatever you want or call Doctor Strange whenever you want to solve whatever problem you need solved by the flick of his wrist. Same thing with Franklin Richards. Oh, we roll ourselves in a corner. Let's call the reality warping kid from the Fantastic Four and to solve our problems that we roll ourselves in a corner with. No. Can't have that. So it's like, okay, Doctor Strange can't just willy-nilly use his powers without some kind of, negative feedback in some kind of way, especially for the big magic spells. Franklin Richards can't just have like a reality warping dude, kid just to whip up whatever, fix whatever problem you want him to just fix up willy-nilly. That's not, it's not a fun read. Anyway, Galactus wants the kid so he can take on the responsibilities of being to have his power because he's grown sick of it. He doesn't want to do this anymore. He wants to be able to rest because he's very old, very ancient. Even before the universe was even like at least the universe they reside was even conceived. He's very old. You touch on his origin story a little bit. And it's like, okay, I need somebody to take this responsibility. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And with your son, who Reed and Sue tried to test it numerous times, but couldn't find anything. So for all intents and purposes, for all they knew, he's just like a normal baby. But no, the kid is hiding his power from you. So that's why you couldn't pick it up. But I see it. Uh, so he induces the labor so she can quickly birth the kid because he says like, I will leave your planet alone, but you got to give me your kid. And of course, they're not, giving that up. So they hightail it out of there. Silver Surfer is chasing after them. Uh, and in an awesome scene, they, fly. They take their ship and fly near a black hole, where they trick the Silver Surfer into flying into, as they try to drift, like some Tokyo drifting out of there to make their way back to Earth. In the meantime, Sue gives birth to Franklin Richards. All of it is a very awesome shot, you know. So they come back to Earth, and instead of resting a bit through their ordeal, they take the time to do a freaking press conference. But I get it; these people want to need some answers, and they ask like, "Hey, did you solve the whole situation? Did you defeat Galactus?" And they was like, they were straight up, which I appreciate. There's no liar reveal, none of that crap. It's like, no, we didn't. And he said he would leave our planet alone if we give him something. He wants our kid. And we said no. So now the public is turning against him. The same people who are worshiping him as like, superhero celebrities. Now they're kind of like dogging them every which way, because now their planet, their whole lives, and everybody they know is going to be destroyed. And one way they can easily have prevented that is just give their kid, which you would think they. I wish they would get more like some kind of news outlets or some kind of debate outlets or something like that on news conferences. They show a lot in this film. It's like, okay, have some back and forth debate with some pundits or something. It's like, how can you expect a family to give up their child? It's like, we all have children. It's like, the needs of the many, blah, blah, blah. They could have had something like that to really kind of hit home, like the general public and their, infighting, because everything gotten so dire. Uh, uh, but then we got Johnny Storm, who somehow, I mean, they showed it technically, but Johnny Storm, by and large, it's not like he's an idiot. He's just kind of childish. But the fact that he's able to decipher Shia LaBeouf's alien language from his first interaction with her, I call cap a little bit on that. I buy it more with Sue, or definitely Reed, of deciphering that language more so than Johnny or Ben being able to do so. It's like it's a little too far fetched for me, knowing how I know the character. Not like I said, not saying Johnny Storm is an idiot. He's pretty smart in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to being a mechanic or something like that, and know his way around a car and a bit of engineering here and there. But deciphering alien language from a sentence seems a little bit, maybe if she spoke a full paragraph or something, and then because he recorded through his suit, maybe because you gotta have more to go on. You talk to probably any linguist in the world, I'm pretty sure they will say like, okay, we can't just decipher an entire language just for one sentence. We need a lot to go off of to formulate, certain like hieroglyphics, or things of that nature. Okay, we need to have like a good portion here to decipher A, B to all the way to C. All the way to Z, in order to get the letters that we need, in order to be able to formulate words, then sentences, and then full on speech. You can't do that from one short sentence. It's kind of like, and I say he can't do it, but Johnny would have need a lot to go off of from that. But like I said, at least they showed him actually working on that, so I can, just barely accept it, in my mind, just barely. Then thanks to retracking the Sephiroth route that she took just to get here and all the planets that were consumed, Johnny was able to record the last messages from the past few planets that she visited. Meanwhile, which is honestly one of the best scenes in this film for a lot of people, and I think so too, that Reed and about to say Vanessa Kirby, Reed and Sue get into a full-on argument like any married couple would, that she found it disgusting how Reed looked like, or seemingly, even though he didn't say it, seemed like he was actually contemplating on giving up their kid. And all Reed says, look, I'm the smartest man. I'm one of the smartest men in the world. I think all different possibilities, including the most awful ones. I have to be able to do that in order to avoid those awful scenarios, but I have to think about them in order to do all that stuff. I don't think, me personally, I don't think Sue was being all that fair to Reed because like I said, the tit for tat, like a married couple, they kind of, cut each other off at the legs with very mean-spirited, hurt feeling type of arguments. Like, she kind of went at him sometimes I wish you wasn't you, or something like that, and it was very much hurtful. Now you can say could she probably didn't mean it. She was things are heating up and people tend to say what they don't really mean. But it's you got a super smart scientist guy that has to think about all these possibilities. Like you said, he never said he was actually going to do it. He was just making sure he crunched all the numbers and think about all these different possible scenarios as possible so he can come to the better conclusion. Then this part kind of took me out of the movie just a little bit, where protesters are in front of the Baxter building, these people kind of wanting them to give up the baby in order to save their planet. Sue, yeah, she has powers. Anybody who possibly becomes a threat, she probably can make some kind of thin layer of invisible wall to protect herself and her baby. But even still, that's very dangerous. It's like any one of those people could have tried something. But she went all the way down and made this big speech that changed the hearts and mind of the world. And it's like, that is way too easy. There could at least have been some people in the crowd giving her, not lip, but just voicing their concerns, legitimate concerns. But no, she gives a speech about how her and Johnny lost their mother in a car accident, and they was raised by the father who tried his best, but they promised him to always stick together as a family. But I do like this line where she says, I will not give up my baby for the planet, but I will not give up the planet for my baby. Because you all are my, pretty much family to us. And I like that line. I like that line. Everything that came before it seems a very very super melodrama, easy fix kind of speech. You're not Captain America. When he gives this speech, this is vastly different from this kind of speech. I'm sorry. It just is. Because that's the way Steve Rogers gives speeches is very much a rallying cry that kind of it's done so well. It just envelops your heart, and you're not only the people in the film buy into it, but the people watching it really buys into it. Uh, like I don't think many people buy into this speech all that well. But then it gives Reed an idea because early on in the film he was working on this kind of transporter thing with his egg, and he comes up with the plan where he'll teleport the planet many light years in a different open space in the universe. I guess hopefully there's like a sun there, so that way they can have sunlight and all this other stuff. But then, because they got like at least several months before Galactus and Silver Surfer comes in. So let's say they got like a 6 months, maybe a little over 6 months to get everything in order. So they built all over the world. They commissioned to get all these machines, like giant size versions of the egg teleporter thing, all around the world, so that way it can just pretty much warp the planet to a separate space. Right as they are about to make the jump, Silver Surfer comes by, smashes every one of those machines except the one in New York, where you would think to be the first place she would go. But the jump failed, and as she's making her way to New York, Johnny flies out and intercepts her, speaks her language to get her to stop, and he plays back the final cries of each planet that she helped get destroyed. And you see like a flashback of her on planet Zenla with a kid that you assume would be her and Norrin Radd's kid, Norrin Radd being the standard Silver Surfer that we all expect. But there's no Norrin Radd at all, which is weird. It's like only just the mom and the daughter, and it's like, and Galactus shows up and makes her herald, makes her his herald, in order to protect her planet. Whereas you could not have been bothered to show a Norrin Radd. Maybe they haven't cast like a Norrin Radd yet, so they can't guarantee a particular, because they don't want to commit to a particular character or actor. But it's just like you could have shown like the back of somebody's bald head, hinting at a Norrin Radd, but didn't give like an actual face, so you can always have that way out, so you can cast a Norrin Radd later. It seems like Disney, Marvel, they're still doing the whole. There's always that tinge of girl bossified crap they gotta still weave into this thing. It's not as greasy as past Disney projects before, but every once in a while they kind of worm that in there in some form or fashion. It's kind of glaring at a certain point. But she's, flies off completely distraught over the things she done. But then Galactus is, a few planets away from showing up. So they get Mole Man, who's now some kind of like, kind of like a sovereign nation in his own right, which I kind of find this part pretty funny, where Mole Man wants Reed to beg him for help, and of course it's kind of leaves like a funny interaction. It's like, oh god, this is like so annoying. But I thought that was, Reed find it so annoying, but I thought it was pretty doggone funny. It's just like you want, Reed to be the one to ask him, because he's supposed to be the smartest man in the world. But it's like, I want the smartest man in the world to come beg for me for help. It's like, I thought that part was pretty doggone funny. So Mole Man agrees to because they come up with a plan where, okay, which is probably should have been the first plan, but whatever. They decide, okay, we're gonna use our kid as bait. Says we only got the one functioning teleporter, but it's large enough to transport Galactus to a separate part of the universe, whereas a million light years away. And by the time he even comes rolling back around, it'll be millions of years has passed at that point. So we're pretty much like, either way, the situation, will protect the Earth. And a million years from now, the Earth will probably be a desolate wasteland, so nobody will be here to give a crap. Which is a smart plan. But they need to make sure that, okay, like with the whole Superman thing, we gotta make sure that nobody's in the city that in case things, buildings get wrecked or what have you. So they have Mole Man and a bunch of buses carry all of, just probably just, it seems like mainly the Isle of Manhattan primarily, but pretty much all in New York, just for the safe side, in these underground tunnels, just in case, like, okay, it's because Galactus' massive creature is probably gonna be stomping through a lot of buildings. Can't have any civilians being hurt. So when Galactus shows up, shocked that he didn't like knock down the Statue of Liberty just for shits and giggles, but it's fine. He starts charging through, not charging, he just walks, sees the kid, through his cosmic vision, sitting on the platform where they want him to step. So he walks there, but he realizes, like, oh, it's a trap, because they did like a bait and switch, sends the kid to the Baxter building for Herbie of all robots to look after him. Even though I like the look of Herbie in this, it's very much cool. Now, I like the Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes TV show, which I reviewed on the channel, and I thought that was a pretty spot on Fantastic Four depictions. And I like that version of Herbie there because he's pretty much like in a Siri AI, a Siri type of, voice in the walls, like Jarvis was in the first couple of Iron Man films. I kind of like Herbie as that, but I like this Herbie too. Kind of, like I said, honoring the Jack Kirby aesthetic. So Galactus flings Ben Grimm out darn near, about to fly out into space. Johnny catches him, and of course does that whole combo move where, of course, it's been played for last, but they kind of saved the famous Ben Grimm line. It's clobbering time, because it's like a cartoon thing, and he doesn't really say that, but they finally get him to say that in order to like knock out Galactus with him. And they kind of implement that move in the Marvel Rivals game, which I just, did the move recently in a gameplay that I have on the channel if you want to check out me utilizing that move quite a few times. And then you see very few times Reed actually using his elastic powers, because I think they're trying to avoid the same backlash as the previous Fantastic Four films have faced when it comes to the look of stretching powers from Reed Richards, because they, most people don't like the look because it always looks stupid to the vast majority of people. I'm not saying I don't get the sentiment, but I think I like it in the Tim Story version because, look, You're not gonna make it look realistic. Nobody stretches like that in real life. So you can't make it authentic or not CGI looking. It's gonna look how it's gonna look. You just do the best you can with it. That's why I can't really uh, fault anybody trying to make the stretching powers stretch. It's gonna look very Gumby. It is. There's no way around it. And at a certain point, we're gonna have to just all gonna have to get over it. Even if we had the technology of 30 years from now, even then it probably won't look good. It's like we're not being very fair to the animators and the directors and the people behind the scenes. It's not fair to them. They can't make it work. That's why I think they try to have him stretch as little as possible in this film. So when he does it, you still get I think it's still better looking by comparison to previous films, but you still get those similar effects a bit. But they're trying to lessen the backlash as possible with the stretch look. But you see them all teaming up together to take down Galactus, who's very menacing in this, grab a hold of Reed and try to stretch him out to his limits. And you see like a gleeful face, a smirk on his face when he's stretching out Reed. And that's when like Ben and Johnny come in the clutch to keep Reed from dying. But when Galactus gets a hold of Franklin, Sue exerts herself by force pushing, but like using her, force field pushing Galactus very close to the teleporter. Reed gets the baby and Johnny shuts on the machine with barely sucking in Galactus. Female Silver Surfer comes in, preventing Johnny from doing the whole sacrifice. People calling it the Rose Tico move. Just coming in, preventing Johnny from making the sacrifice. As she makes the sacrifice, making up for all the deaths that she caused, and pushes Galactus into the teleporter along with herself. Pretty much saving the world. Of course, Sue ends up dying from the overexertion, but of course Franklin Richards comes in, Deus Ex Machina, revives her, the world is saved. There's two end credit scenes. One of them, the very last one, is the most useless one. Avoid that. It's so a waste of time. But the first end credit thing is what's the most impactful one, where you see like a green cloak figure wearing the holding the Doom mask, facing 4-year-old Franklin Richards before the credits roll. Now, I think this is probably like the better, just in terms of writing quality. I think, and then the overall cinematography and the look is probably the best one of all the Fantastic Four films that we've gotten. This one's definitely the better one. However, I do not like the Julia Gardner Silver Surfer. The chrome looks very muted and not polished at all. The Tim Story Silver Surfer, the Rise of the Silver Surfer film, that one, even though it was like 20 years ago at this point, still looks far better than this. And it's kind of weird to me. I don't care. Clearly there was some kind of mandate. They gotta have like a female Silver Surfer, and there's shills on the internet, and I hate to even use that word, but they making all these excuses in the world talking about like, oh, it was a thing in the comics. And it's like, just because it's a thing in the comics doesn't mean you need to adapt every little thing in the comics, because not everything in the comics was good. There are bad stories in comics. Throughout the history of comics being a thing, there's always been bad stories. There's always been bad writing, bad art. Not everything needs to be adapted for that very reason. You should adapt pretty much the good stuff, or allude, or at least take inspiration from certain stories. You don't have to make it beat for beat. But like, for example, the Civil War storyline, it wasn't beat for beat, but you take that same plot and adapt it in an MCU version of it. Because that was like a good idea, but it was the execution of it was kind of sloppy. I reviewed that earlier this year, the Marvel Civil War comic, and it's like a good premise, but the execution of it was very, very bad. The Earth X Silver Surfer, female Silver Surfer, I don't even think that was even Shia LaBeouf. It was some other woman. I could be wrong about that. Even if it was Shia LaBeouf, it was like one issue. And it just shows that Disney was trying to find any excuse to try to. You didn't have to do all that stuff, okay? By and large, people recognize, even if you're not a comic book fan, you know of the Silver Surfer, and by and large, you know he was a man. So it's just like, that is the version that you. It's not saying you can't experiment, because you got the whole multiverse thing. It's not like you can't experiment with other versions of certain standard characters, but you got to establish the ones that people know first before you start futzing with anything else in that same vein. Female Silver Surfer is not the first thing out the gate you should be doing right now, because that's something people want or expecting to see. Clearly there was an agenda in place, some kind of mandate in place. You'd be hard pressed not to see that. And then there's people on the internet that's like, well, it happened in the comics. It's like, it doesn't make a person an ist or a foe for pointing out the fact that, okay, what are we doing here? Sorry about that. It's just like, it's just like certain things behind the scene is just like, okay, you guys gotta stop at this point. People in general, who are sensible people, mind you, can see through the BS. You didn't need to do that. And it wasn't even good looking on top of that. Not the actors. I'm talking about, like, the way they depict the character. It's just like, it seems like throughout the other stuff that look good, matter of fact, you can talk about the baby. The CGI baby is like darn near as bad. It's just like they pour all their funds into making sure that Galactus look good, the world around them look good, but there's certain things that have to take a back seat. And despite you trying to promote this little female Silver Surfer so hard, you didn't do a very good job of trying to make the character look good. Hell, you got T-1000 look still better than this. And then you got the CGI baby looking all wonky and stuff. Like, you severely, I could have forgiven the CGI baby looking bad if you at least making sure, because nobody gives a crap about CGI baby by and large looking, terrible. People can let that slide, but something like Galactus and the Silver Surfer, those things you have to make sure you look good, and you pour all your funds to making sure Galactus, he does look great, but man, that you severely cut back on the funds when it comes to Silver Surfer. Uh, the team, like I said, I like the chemistry with these 4 actors. However, when it comes to the characters, it seems so toned down from what we know them to be. Like Johnny Storm, they only allude to him being a kind of like a womanizer, but they can't really show it. They have him lightly flirt with female Silver Surfer, but not all that much. They kind of toss that out the way very quickly, and it's like, okay, I don't even know why you can have him on a press conference months ago talking about like, we don't live in that day and age where that womanizing is acceptable. He didn't phrase it like that, but that's the juxtaposition that they have him take. He could just not said it at all. But Johnny Storm is a player. By and large, that's what people recognize Johnny Storm to be. But in this day and age, it looks very misogynistic. Even though ladies love a player, it is a thing. Devil May Care attitude, good looking, hot shot of a dude like Johnny Storm gets women. Similar to Tony Stark. He's not a monster for sleeping with tons of women, especially those tons of women like sleeping with them. It's kind of weird to make that like a cross that, or a hill that you have to die on about that. You got, Sue pretty much a de facto leader of the group, because I get it. Since the Jack Kirby version of the Fantastic Four, there was a bit of a misogynistic kind of, thing because it was the time when these things was written, where she seems very meek of a wife that was ignored, and as Reed was building stuff, even though they love each other, it was written as the time it was written in. Doesn't mean that anybody condones it, but in that pursuit to make sure that part is not looked in any type of way, they gotta go overboard in the other direction to make sure, like, she runs, like political thing. She's like some kind of de facto politician in the UN kind of stuff, even though she's a freaking scientist. But Reed is not. He's supposed to be the leader, but it seems like, they got him being like second fiddle. He does take some leadership roles here and there, but it's just like, co-lead kind of situation. I don't know. They trying to. It seems to me they trying to go out of their way to make sure that, she is like not standing on the sidelines, and Sue was never on the sidelines outside of the whole Jack Kirby depiction. Going from like the 80s on to now, she's pretty much got agency. And she was a badass character, especially during the 90s and early 2000s. She's like really, like a lot of female characters really hitting that stride around that time. And was written well with layers and not girl bossing. Joseph Quinn, like I said, he was very toned down, not like a hot shot kind of thing. I think Ben Grimm was probably like the best character in my opinion. So they're very like the very muddied versions of the characters' behaviors and mannerisms from what we are known for them to do. I'm gonna address, just to wrap it up, I'm going to talk about the whole behind the scenes kind of thing, the role leading up to this movie coming out. Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby's behavior is very weird, and I'm starting to think that at some point down the line in the future, Pedro Pascal might go and have an allegation put pin on him, the way he carry on, where it's like male feminists gets very annoying because like they seem like they're overcompensating over any f stuff they probably did before. Now they overcompensating now, just try to cover up or trying to buy goodwill in case something comes up later. Because most of the time they probably don't believe what half the stuff they say, in my opinion. But the whole touching, you can look it up. It's been circulating for a week straight leading up to this film, because it's kind of like, oh, he's having this anxiety, so he has Vanessa Kirby constantly holding his hand, caressing his neck and stuff. It's very weird. It kind of reminds me of the whole Wicked promos with like those two main actresses, Ariana Grande and Cynthia, where they like just constantly touching each other. What's up with these actors? They can't like sit still and behave, and it's gotta have to hold each other like they're 8-year-old kids. They need their mom. It's weird. And it's like, oh, he got anxiety. They got medication for that. Or I'm pretty sure you should be seeking a therapist for that. You're on a red carpet on the eyes of, with millions of people got eyes on you right now. And it come across very odd where you constantly got to have her hold your hand like a little lost kid. And then this woman is married. And I'm pretty sure she got her husband probably having some words with her too. And you can't utilize the excuse like, oh, it's just part of something like the press tour. We gotta look like we're very close and all this other stuff to really sell the fact that these two are a couple in the movie. You worked in Hollywood for a very long time, lady, and very often you're like the main female lead, with the male lead that you're supposed to have like romantic chemistry, whatever, with in the film. At no point, I'm pretty sure you can look up any, like, matter of fact, you can look at it right now. I'm pretty sure she got an extensive filmography. Yeah, she's married to retired lacrosse player Paul Rabil, who's a sports executive right now. What's our filmography? Yeah. Prior to this, he was in Mission Impossible Reckoning, Eden, Napoleon, Italian Studies, The World to Come, Pieces of a Woman, Hobbs and Shaw, Mr. Jones, Mission Impossible Fallout, just to go through a handful here. At no point did she have to hold Tom Cruise's hand, or just people with anxiety. I was like, it's come across as very odd. Okay? Why are you making some kind of, excuse for Pedro Pascal? If you need somebody to hold his hand, you better, take some anxiety medication or something that, it's like a teddy bear he can, clutch or something, or Lucky Rabbit's foot, or something that he can rub on if he needs, something to calm his nerves and something like that. I get it. You're in front of large crowds, you probably got a bit of anxiety. I'm not discounting that part. Having an issue with the fact that you're constantly doing it. Now, it was only maybe the first couple of times you probably can, get some, you can cut him some slack, but it is constant. And the fact that it gets uncomfortable a bit. It's like they were saying, like, I wanted to wait until the tail end of this review to address that. It's just, I'm not, we all seeing this, so I'm not crazy. this guy's gonna have some problems in the future if he doesn't like deal with what he gotta deal with right now. Because imagine when they come back for Avengers Doomsday, and she's on the red carpet with him, next to him, and she constantly like holding his hand, lead him on like a little puppy. And then Pedro Pascal's sister, former brother, trans sibling, wants to play like one of the female mutants for an X-Men project. I forgot. I don't know if it was Rogue or something. I don't know. It was like, either way, it's just like, fuck no. You stay away from anything, because you and your brother is just kind of like, you're both a lot right now. We kind of just want to just step away for a while. Well, Pedro Pascal to a lesser degree, because he got to come back for Doomsday. But just F off for a little bit. Like, I know it sounds mean-spirited, but like, it's just the fatigue, okay? It's just like, the whole Pascals are just like, oh my goodness, you're just a lot right now. And you come across very weird, probably the most weird celebrities that we ever seen in quite a long time. And that's saying something. Anyway, that was just, ranting a little bit at that point, but I just, want to make sure I got my thoughts out for the First Steps film. All in all, great film. I'm pretty sure, because here's the thing. This movie for Marvel was a very make or break thing. They could not screw this up. Now, you can make the argument, well, you mean tell me that in the past few movies they was pretty much half-assing it the whole entire time? I'm not saying they have or have not. I'm just saying that because they've been pulling out some crap projects, Fantastic Four isn't one they gotta justify continuing on with this franchise, because like with Superman, who was also a very make it or break kind of thing, they have to be successful, not just in terms of the audience, but in terms of the box office too. They gotta just barely, hit like over the 600 million marker for the studio heads to justify continuing on with this nonsense, because the heads at Warner Brothers and the heads at Disney right now have been dropping the ball too many times. There's not like a random Thor the Dark World here and there, in rare occasions. We're talking about constant, with few gems in between all that stuff. That is a problem for this type of, these franchises. They don't need to get in that. They have to have that ducks in a row before they continue on doing anything else. Cutting down the woke girl boss crap. Actually get some good, competent writers on these projects. Cast actors appropriately, and give the characters some layers, so the audience, by and large, could enjoy the experience rather than coming to a theater just to get lectured to about women's struggles or a person of color struggles, and shame on you for not supporting this, because if you don't, you're a phobe. People don't want to hear that. It's annoying. It's condescending. You just want to go for a bit of escapism. If you want to, this is not a documentary. It's not like, a biopic or something like that. You can leave that kind of stuff to those genres. Not saying like superheroes can't speak on certain issues, but if it's just like your character is just only about that, then it gets kind of eye-rolly. I was thinking about making some kind of TikTok video about that. It's just like having your characters, just because they're like a person of color or a woman and that's their only identity, how people going to enjoy the movie that they're in. like, they having so much trouble making a Blade film. It's like, why? Because you having tough time trying to fit some kind of girl boss, you know, a person of color struggle into the mix, where it's just supposed to be just like a daywalker fighting vampires. That's not that complicated. But you're trying to overcomplicate it by interjecting things that's not needed in a simple superhero fighting vampires film. You don't need to have like a moment where you go dress like the struggles of being like a black vampire amongst vampires that is primarily white or something like that. Even though there's plenty of black or Asian vampires that you can just have. You don't need to, it's not like a white thing. It's just like you're overcomplicating it. Anyway, that was just my thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps. I'll see you guys in a little bit. I think I'll wait till next week to continue on with more reaction videos. I want to get back to more Expedition 33. I will be reviewing Naked Gun, the rebooted one with Liam Neeson. I'm very much looking forward to that. So that review will be next Saturday, if hopefully I'm not caught up with anything else. So whenever I get around to do more reaction videos, I'll try to probably, if I couldn't do it today, I'll try I'm not going to wait until a whole nother week. I'll try to see if I can fit it in. If not tomorrow afternoon, maybe Monday, to satisfy the reaction stuff. But anyway, I will see you guys a little bit later as I get back to playing some more Expedition 33. So take care, and I'll see you all later. And leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys thought of First Steps. All the good, all the bad. Because, yeah, like I said, there's a decent 7 out of 10. The same way how I felt about the Superman film. Solid 7 out of 10. It did its job, and it was good. Overall, it was good. But anyway, I'll see you guys later. Take care.